We are back. Whoa. We are back from the ratings.
Jesus Christ.
Here we are, and now we're going to end the show with some Guess the Program.
Yeah, after you've got my ears ringing, I told you I was gonna steamroller you today on this thing. I'm feeling good. I'm looking good. I've been working out. I've been doing push-ups, pull-ups, chin-ups, sit-ups. I threw up once. I'm okay now. I'm ready to do Guess the Program.
Of course, the way this works is I go through my program collection, things that I have, things that I have acquired, things that arrive here at Last Manor, and
I think we got that idea.
Okay, well, it. God damn it. We'll go right to the first program.
Well, no, I mean, we know that they're your programs and you possess them, but the premise is you're going to give me the lineup and I'm going to tell you where it was and hopefully the year, if not approximately, then exactly.
Yes.
That's the premise.
And I'm going to start you with an easy one because you are an older gentleman. I'm going to start you with an easier one. The first match listed, best 2 out of 3 falls, 60-minute time limit, for the World Tag Team Championship, Don and Bobby Fields versus Butch Boyette and Mighty Yankee. Best 2 out of 3 falls, 60-minute time limit, Sputnik Monroe versus Pepe Pasquale. There'll be a 10-minute intermission where lucky numbers will be announced.
Can't wait for that.
And the main event for the World Championship, and let me just actually see on the program if it's, World Junior Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
Billy Wicks against the champion, Mike DiBiase.
Okay. Well, Don and Bobby Fields are the sons or family members of Lee Fields and Speedy Hatfield and the Fields family of Alabama that were related to the Welch Fuller family. And they ran, obviously, Gulf Coast wrestling before it became Continental or Southeastern, whatever. Butch Boyette is an alter ego of Mario Galento. The Mighty Yankee could have been anybody at that point. Sputnik Monroe, obviously, we know who Sputnik is. And the World Junior Heavyweight title being on the line with Iron Mike DiBiase against Billy Wicks. Wicks and Sputnik obviously drew tons of money in 1959 in Memphis. And Sputnik was always a favorite, as was Billy Wicks of the Fullers and Welches. Well, Sputnik longer. Billy Wicks pretty much got out of the business on a full-time basis in the early 60s. So this is going to be the Alabama territory, the Gulf Coast territory. It's probably going to be Mobile. And it would be in the... it would probably be possibly the year before Sputnik and Billy Wicks drew all that money in Memphis. Because if I remember correctly, at least Sputnik and I believe for sure Billy Wicks had come from working Alabama for the Fieldses and the Fullers, Welches. I'm going to say 1958 Mobile, Alabama.
Very interesting, and let me apologize in advance. The weather is nice, the gardeners are out, so you may hear some background noise or buzzing. But Jim, this program, sponsored by American Legion Post Number 1, Memphis, Tennessee.
What?
Monday night, July 6, 1959.
Son of a bitch!
In red ink, that may be Christine Jarrett's at the top of the program, attendance 7,400.
Son of a bitch! I would not. The Fieldses threw me off with Mario Galento being called Butch Boyette. I thought they were in Alabama. But I was almost right on the year. I was actually right on the year without knowing it and then called it the year beforehand.
There was never a more glorious night for wrestling fans of Memphis and the Mid-South than last Monday night when Billy Wicks, sensational young junior heavyweight match star, won the Tennessee Wrestling Championship and also a brand new Cadillac. He defeated Sputnik Monroe in a hard-fought 3-fall bloody match that had the 8,000 fans who were lucky enough to get inside the jam-packed auditorium, screaming the entire three falls. Who was writing this for them, for the programs?
At that point in time, I have no idea. But that indicates that was a sellout because the Ellis Auditorium maxed out at about 8,000 people. So that was during that hot summer run that Sputnik and Wicks were having, even when they weren't working with each other.
All right, unfortunately, I got a few different Memphis programs.
All right, well, now
here.
you've completely goddamn
skip
ruined
around.
my fucking mojo.
Yeah, that was my fault. All right.
Yeah, it was.
All right, we have another one here. This one, Jim, the opening match, one fall, Cola Zabisco versus Doran O'Hara, 30-minute time limit. The semifinal match, 2 out of 3 falls, 60-minute time limit. Thor Hagen versus Al Spider Galento. And the main event, 2 out of 3 falls, Mike Clancy and Eduardo Perez versus Al Smith and John Smith. And I'll also throw this in there, coming soon, Wild Red Berry.
Whew. All right. You are attempting to throw me off. This is going to be either East Tennessee or possibly, again, a Birmingham, Alabama type of... No, that's not a big enough card for Birmingham. Al Spider Galento, obviously, was a Tennessee mainstay in the 40s and 50s. He helped train Tommy Gilbert. He was a very well thought of worker. The Smith brothers had the beards and the gimmick was they were the Smith brothers that looked like the cough drop box of the time. Mike Clancy was a journeyman, and Eduardo Perez worked quite a bit around the Southern Territory. Thor Hagen, do I remember him from Minnesota, possibly? The first two, there's no way to tell. Is this East Tennessee?
This is indeed East Tennessee.
I'm going to say Kingsport, early 60s, I'm just guessing 1962.
The date, October 19th, 1956.
Ah, shit.
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Knoxville. Son of a bitch. All righty then. At least I got the region.
Wild Red Berry is on his way. Irish Mike Clancy in a tag team bout. Mike Padusis has an injured arm. All right, Jim.
Now, goddammit, if you'd have told me that. No. Right. Mike Padusis played football for the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Oh. Wow, so that would have been a clue. There you go. Well, how about this one?
See, he still wrestled a lot in Kingsport and whatever, but nevertheless.
The first event, in a colored men's wrestler match, Tex Brady, the Southern Negro heavyweight champ, Dallas, Texas, versus Willie Love from Savannah, Georgia. One fall, 15 minutes.
Okay. I've never heard either one of those names before in my life.
The second event, either have I, to be honest. The second event, Tough Tony Morelli, Bronx, New York, versus Cliff Swede Olson. One fall, 15 minutes. The third event, again, one fall, 15 minutes. Nick the Wild Man Roberts, Tampa, Florida, versus Bob Geigel. In the semifinal for the World's Tag Team Championship, with words. The World's Tag Team Championship, Art Nelson and Doug Donovan, the champions.
Oh.
Versus Sonny Myers and Silent Joe Hamilton. 2 out of 3 falls, 1 hour time limit. And finally, the main event for the World's Junior Heavyweight Championship, once again, the champion Iron Mike DiBiase versus Dory Funk Sr.
Oh.
No senior here, but I'm saying senior just to make sure you understand.
Just because Dory Jr. would have been 12.
With the same haircut, though, so look the same.
Same haircut. We're in Texas or New Mexico, potentially. Let's examine this. Nobody knows Tex Brady and Willie Love, but the fact that it was advertised as a world colored title or whatever the fuck, they're down south, and it leads me to Texas because of Nick Roberts, who was Baby Doll's father and who later on would become the promoter for Fritz von Erich in at least Lubbock, if not Amarillo. Bob Geigel is most noted as a big star in the Central States and later on the NWA president, but he spent a lot of time in Texas early in his career. The World Tag Title, Art Nelson, was a name wrestler for years in a number of territories, even the Carolinas, but Doug Donovan would later on become one of the Von Brauners, was he not?
I guess so. You know what? For whatever reason, my mind went to Dandy Jack Donovan.
No. Danny Jack Donovan is a completely different person.
Yeah, you're
Doug
right.
Donovan is one of the Von Brauners.
That's right.
Because the other Von Brauner, was he Kurt or was he Carl? Because the other Von Brauner was named Jimmy Brawner, which is where they got it from. Nevertheless, Sonny Myers, another Missouri, Kansas mainstay, and Jody Hamilton, who obviously was from the Midwest. Mike DiBiase, we just talked about on the Memphis card, and Dory Funk. Is this? It's definitely West Texas. Swede Olson was a name that worked the Funk's West Texas territory quite a bit. We've established that DiBiase was the World Junior Heavyweight Champion in the late 50s and early 60s. Is this Amarillo, and is it 1959 or 1960?
Very, very good. Amarillo, Texas, Thursday, June 25th, 1959.
Boom. There we go.
A couple interesting things in here. Coming soon, midget wrestlers Joe Scarpello, Anton Ripper Leone, after his broken leg mends. But listen to this. Attention wrestling fans. Free bus service. Promoter Doc Sarpolis is furnishing free bus service to and from the wrestling matches every Thursday night. The bus leaves the corner of 6th and Polk at 7:45 p.m. and comes directly to the sports arena. Immediately after the matches, the bus reloads and returns downtown. So hop the bus and attend the matches every Thursday night. How many promoters did that where they got bus service?
Well, you know, because on the excellent Amarillo history book that Scott Teal put together, crowbarpress.com, they had a bunch of cars being broken into in the sports arena parking lot at the wrestling matches. There would be things in the newspaper, notices about it. They may have come up with that as a marketing strategy to get people to not be afraid to come.
Wrestling returns to Pampa. I assume that's how you pronounce that.
Pampa.
P-A-M-P-A.
Yes.
Wrestling is returned to Pampa on Saturday night with Bob Geigel promoting for the Shrine Club. This Saturday, Bob has another great card lineup, and for fans wishing to make reservations early, you may do so by going to Levine's Department Store in Pampa, where advance tickets are on sale. How about that? Bob Geigel actively wrestling and promoting.
Well, in a lot of cases, and of course, Geigel would get into the office in Kansas City, but they would, one of the spot shows or a regular spot show or whatever, they'd give one of the guys, okay, this year. Buddy Wayne did that in Memphis for years. And some of the guys that at the time might be working in the middle of the card, but they showed a good business mind or they were enterprising. Yeah, you take Pampa and run that once every 6 weeks or whatever. Pampa, Texas was the gimmick hometown of Outlaw Ron Bass.
All right, Jim, this next program here. By the way, intermissions after the second and third matches. The first event, Butcher Brannigan versus Scott Casey. The second event, Ivan Putski, 270 out of Poland, versus Lord Alfred Hayes, 240 out of London. In a special event, Black Gordman and Great Goliath versus Hank James, Harlem, 240, and Moondog Maine, Crabtree, Arkansas, 255. The main event, The Sheik, Black Gordman, Great Goliath,
What?
Lord Alfred Hayes, Butcher Brannigan, and Gary Hart versus Fritz Von Erich, Ivan Putski, Scott Casey, Moondog Maine, Tony Charles, and Hank James
Jesus.
in a 12-man tag team elimination match. And after the main event, the final event, The Sheik versus Tony Charles.
Good Lord. Okay, well, obviously we're in Texas. And as I'm looking at this, they obviously in the, what is that, a 12-man tag?
Yes,
The
elimination.
12-man tag, they've got Gary Hart on one side and Fritz Von Erich on the other side, because Fritz was the all-time hero and the patriarch, and as we'll get into here in a second, probably on the downhill side of his in-ring career, and Gary Hart was the top heel manager. So that was this is not a really attractive card. The Sheik was a fucking major name in the business, but he never had a box office issue with Tony Charles, even though Tony Charles was a great wrestler. But I can't imagine what the match between the Sheik and Tony Charles would look like. Tony Charles was more in the vein of a Billy Robinson, and we know where the Sheik where his veins were. Scott Casey, longtime Texan, had wrestled in a variety of places, but most noted for working in Texas. Ivan Putski was huge in Texas. And remember, Paul Bosch in Houston said he was one of the best baby faces that he ever had when he was doing the Mighty Igor gimmick. And then he went to New York and learned how to speak English, and Paul Bosch said, "You've killed Ivan Putski for us." Lord Al Hayes, long time in Texas. Gordman and Goliath, same thing. Hank James must have been just passing through. Moondog Maine, most noted for his runs in Portland and the Northwest and the WWF as a heel against Pedro. So we're in either Dallas or Fort Worth or something of that nature. And would this have been Fritz and Gary Hart on it? Would this have been 1975-ish? Potentially 74-ish, 5-ish?
The date, January 24th, 1977. 25 cents this program. Casa Mañana, Fort Worth, Texas.
Casa Mañana?
That is the name here, and I looked it up because I was like, that doesn't sound right. That is indeed the name of the place in Fort Worth, Texas that they ran. It must have had to be in a different building for a few weeks.
So not the normal Will Rogers Coliseum or out there at the fairgrounds or whatever. Okay, well, I'm sorry about the year. You know what? I should have said that because Fritz was still more active in 74, 75, but the Sheik, again, threw me off. That's when his territory was going down and he was starting to take more outdates. But boy, you see how the Freebirds and the Von Erich boys revitalized the world class, or the, at that time, big time wrestling territory in Dallas, because that was not a rip snorter of a card, was it?
Well, let's see what you think about this next one. I don't even know where to begin with this one. All right.
Oh boy.
There will be 10 girl bouts.
What?
They're not listed, but it says plus 10 girl bouts. I'll start with that.
Not a 10-girl bout, but 10 girl bouts?
It says 10 girl bouts.
Okay.
And I actually don't think, based on what I know about this, that sounds like it could be a realistic thing. An extra added attraction tag team match. Golden Moose Cholak and Texas Bruiser versus Bronze Bomber and Slugger Kowalski.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. What are you doing to me here?
Let me just see if they have a different name here. Cowboy George Valentine.
Uh-oh.
The Bobby Sox Darling versus Herman Schmidt.
The German Menace.
And finally, in the main event, a non-title match, one fall to the finish. The Southern Rebel Wildman Fargo, the only holder of 2 world titles and 2 diamond belts, versus the African Killer, Gorilla Parker, the Jungle Iron Man. And for the record, this is a photo of the Black Panther actually here.
Jim Mitchell?
That's right.
Son of a gun. Okay, obviously this is a Jack Pfeffer production, and we're in Chicago. And Cowboy George Valentine was Buddy Fuller. And Wildman Jackie Fargo was Jackie Fargo when Pfeffer made him his world champion, which was in between Fargo's runs as part of the Fargo brothers in Tennessee. I don't think that was really the Black Panther Jim Mitchell as Gorilla Parker. I think that was Jack Pfeffer finding a picture of a black guy. Herman Schmidt, of course, the long-lost cousin from Bulgaria or Bavaria of Hans Schmidt.
Can you imagine pulling that in Chicago?
Where Hans Schmidt was one of the biggest box office attractions. Moose Cholak was from Chicago, and from what I understand later on in his life after wrestling, drove a bus there, and who knows who the fuck his partners and opponents were. So it's Chicago, it's Jack Pfeffer, it's the dark days of the International Amphitheater when Fred Kohler was losing his business and his mind. And what was that, 1963? Or was it 64?
This is the International Amphitheater, Friday, December 13th, 1963. Fred Kohler and Jack Pfeffer present the wonder match they said couldn't be made. But the other thing, I'm trying to see if there's...
Can you imagine, this is the site, not only the International Amphitheater, but we're talking fucking Comiskey Park and Wrigley Field, and we're talking Londos and Lewis, and we're talking Rogers and O'Connor, and we're talking Vern Gagne and Thez, and I mean, every major name in these giant houses, and they were doing ballpark shows in 1960, 61, and 62 with 25 and 30,000 people. And by 1963, that same town and that hallowed arena got Jackie Fargo versus Gorilla Parker and a fake Johnny Valentine against a fake Hans Schmidt.
Remember, once Kohler lost the relationship with Toots Mondt and Vince McMahon Sr., it was over.
My God, he could have fucking called Roy Welch down in Nashville, and Roy Welch could have fucking drawn him more money than that.
A little more detail on the inside of this. First time in the USA, an international one-night girls wrestling tournament. Winner to be proclaimed the United States Lady Champion and to receive a Diamond Championship belt presented by Fred Kohler. 20 girls from all over the country, including beautiful Miss Black Orchid, the tallest girl wrestler in the world, 6'2". And then the other thing of note here...
Any other names?
There are no other names, it's just pictures.
That was the biggest, so that was the biggest name girl. If he had a name, he'd advertise it.
It's just
Even
pictures.
If he didn't have a name, he'd advertise it.
Pictures of various girls, but the interesting thing here is there's an article on why the Fargo match is happening, and there's a reference here I've never seen before, so I'll just read it briefly. The Fargo Gorilla Parker match was one of the toughest matches to make. First, there were so many things involved, such as the 2 diamond belts held by Fargo, which places the Wildman Fargo in a position where he could earn $200,000 a year, provided he could retain both the IWA and the World Wrestling Association title. So it goes on further, but
even Swami wasn't going to swallow that.
No, everyone's going crazy here. In negotiating, Fargo demanded a $50,000 guarantee if his titles would be at stake in the match. Fred Kohler and Dr. Pfeffer realized that the Chicago area wrestling fans are not so much interested in seeing the title change hands as they are in seeing the Southern Rebel Fargo get his brains knocked out when the African Killer starts administering his famous cocoa bump on the skull of Wildman Fargo. Dr. Pfeffer.
Fargo may have been the one taking those cocoa bumps, even back then. So now, by the way, this is 1963. So $50,000 in 1963 would be somewhere around 400 or 500 grand today, just
Wow.
in relation.
Well, there it is. That's the first time I've seen Dr. Pfeffer, though.
Dr. Pfeffer, so misunderstood. He's the most original matchmaker in the whole wide world.
All right, let's get one more before we wrap things up. Here's a Memphis one. I'm just going to tell you what the main event is here.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm just going to tell you the main event because it's actually a couple of wrestlers, or at least one wrestler I don't know too much about. Tojo Yamamoto and Johnny Long meet the Sky Brothers in a big elimination tag match.
Okay, Joe and Bill Sky.
What about Johnny Long?
Johnny Long was the original brother of Harley Race. Because Johnny Long was a veteran, a journeyman, as they used to say. And goddamn, he married one of the girls, right? Who was he involved with? But anyway, nevertheless, Johnny Long was established in the Gulas Welch Southern Territory as a heel, and then he got a brother somewhere, I think, around 1963-ish or whatever, named Jack Long, who was Harley Race. And that's when Harley first bleached his hair blonde, I believe. And Johnny and Jack Long were a team in the Tennessee Territory for a while. I think maybe that might have been right around the time that Harley got in that car wreck and got hurt, possibly. Either he came back from the wreck and became Jack Long, or was Jack Long and then got in the wreck. Joe and Bill Sky were Joe Turner and Bill Bowman. And they, again, the Sky Brothers, it was kind of a cowboy, Westernish gimmick. But they worked as a team under their own names also. And Joe Turner was Dennis Condrey's brother-in-law and the guy who broke him into the business. And Dennis's first tag team was with Joe Turner under the hoods for, well, not even Watts, but McGurk in Louisiana as Mephisto and Dante. And we all know who Tojo Yamamoto was.
That's right. Well, let's get one last program here, Jim. This one, all exhibitions under jurisdiction of the State Athletic Commission. Opening bout, 20-minute time limit, one fall. Mike Browning versus Mickey Casey.
Okay.
The second bout, 30-minute time limit, one fall. Chief Thunderbird versus Juan Humberto. The third bout, I believe this is a tag team bout, but the way it's done in the program, it's not explicit, but I believe it is. The Angel and Lee Henning versus Bob Roberts and Leo Demetral.
Demetral.
I don't know. I'm not too familiar with him.
Shit, I can't do it either. It's Jimmy, I think Demetral. Jimmy Demetral had an athletic show that you see a lot of pictures of, the wrestlers on the stage in front of the tent, taking on all comers and everything. So I think it's Demetral.
The main event, 1 hour time limit, 2 out of 3 falls. The Angel versus Bobby Bruns.
Well, Jesus Christ, poor Angel. He's got to do double duty there. Jesus Christ. Bulldog Lee Hennig wrestled everywhere. Is this the Angel Maurice Talay? Is this the Angel Tor Johnson? Which Angel is this? Swedish Angel, French Angel?
There's nothing in the program to mention which Angel it is. There's no picture. There's no indication.
Bobby Bruns was the booker for years in St. Louis, right? And was a big name in the Central States. And he's the guy who was responsible for the first American wrestling tour of Japan that led to Ricky Dozan and Japanese wrestling and the whole 9 yards, right?
That's right.
I don't know who the Chief Thunderbird was I know people are going to be shocked at this, a Native American gimmick wrestler. And Juan Humberto, was a Hispanic wrestler that wrestled in a variety of places. This has got to be 1950s, but I can't pin down a location based on any of this really, except was it somewhere in the Midwest or in the central states because of Bobby Bruns? And I would say I don't know what angel it was. Bulldog Lee Hennigy wasn't the Bulldog then. 1952.
You're right, there aren't a lot of clues here. The town, San Francisco, California.
Son of a bitch.
August 26, 1947.
Ah, okay. Well, San Francisco was not a big name, or not a big name, not a big money town back then in those days as well, as you can see from that lineup. And it, except for Leo Nomalini in the 50s, it wouldn't really be a major money town under, the Joe Mankiewicz, the promoter, until Roy Shire came in and got television and transformed the thing. So, yeah, what a lineup. Was that at the Winterland? Was that at the Civic Auditorium?
It does not specify here. These are really cool programs. I got a pretty big collection. I'm going to call Western Wrestling, and they're just filled with advertisements for everything happening in San Francisco, all the restaurants and everything. So it's really cool. It does not specify what building it's in, no. Presidential Follies, Club Hollywood Dinners, Drink Coca-Cola, the Dolores Club, Time Never Lags at the Dolores Club, Cal's Coffee Shop, Andy Wong's Sky Room. Yeah, nothing about what building this is actually in. But Jim, this program I had here, I want to mention to you before we wrap things up.
I used to go to Andy Wang's Black and Blue Room.
Oh, as I was saying, I had something to tell you about here. This is a program from Nashville, Tuesday night, November 4th, 1952, Hippodrome, West End, under Matt Gossip by Nick Goulas.
Yes.
Realizing the immense interest in the 1952 presidential election, we who stage the weekly wrestling matches at the Hippodrome will keep our fans fully informed on the progress of the election Tuesday night. Returns will be announced as soon as they are received, and our special news telephone, a direct wire with tabulating officials. If you come to the Hippodrome, you may be assured that you will know the progress of the election just as quickly, or perhaps even quicker, than if you remain at home. So whether you're voting for Adlai or Ike, come out for Tuesday night's card and get a double measure of pleasure.
A double measure of pleasure. That had to be Nick.
It's interesting. You never think about wrestling. I guess when things were more local, it makes a lot of sense announcing the election results at the card.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the presidential election, so it didn't have to be local. But see, that was the thing, is that was a big deal, and you stayed at home to, nobody could go out places and be assured of knowing what the results were, what the latest news was. So you stayed home and either watched TV, or at that point, a lot of people still listening to the radio. So they said, hey, come on down. We'll let you know what's going on. That's pretty smart. Was that the Slamogram?
No, that is not the Slamogram. That is Nashville Wrestling News, featuring wrestling, the only year-round sport. Let me open this up. I have it in a protective thing here, because I didn't even tell you what the card was. The card here is listed as...
Well, now, Slamogram was, so that you're opening it up, the Slamograms that Jerry Jarrett started out selling when he was 7 years old or whatever, they were just a front and back sheet and went for a nickel.
Actually, there are no matches listed here. This seems more like just a general wrestling news information.
Huh.
Oh, here we go. Forgive me.
Uh-oh.
The Zebra Kid versus Kelly. Riley and Chief Lone Eagle with Bonita versus King Kong Kashi, and Roberts. And double main event, ladies.
That'd be Rowdy Red Roberts.
Ladies grudge battle, Miss Byers versus Miss May.
June Byers and... was that Violet May?
Miss Ida May.
Ida May. It'd be Ida Mae Martinez, right?
I think so, based on the picture here, yeah.
Yeah.
Art Nelson, 220 pounds, former Black Phantom, returns here first week of December.
There you go. Art Nelson was everywhere. And I think in Nashville, especially, probably more than any other city in the country that I've seen, the women, whether it be Mildred Burke, June Byers, or that era, Cora Combs, because she was from up the road in Eastern Kentucky, they main evented Nashville more often than probably any city in the country. And Mildred Burke was in main events, and they did do main events in those days with the women's matches, but it was often in Nashville. They were over. And maybe I think also Roy Welch was quite a ladies' man. So
The promoter and matchmaker, Nick Goulas, State Tennessee Athletic Inspectors Rutledge Smith and R.M. Herridges, the ticket agents, Jimmy and Ed Thalman, Christine Jarrett, Mohawk Harrison, and James Wright Sr., the cashiers.
Wait a minute. James Wright Sr. was, I believe, Teeny's father.
Oh, interesting.
Because her mother used to come every once in a while to Louisville in the early days of me being a photographer and being in the back, Mama Wright, because Bob Wright, who was the accountant, was her nephew, or would have been Jerry's cousin. I can't remember. But anyway.
Was she also related to Mohawk Harrison?
No, I think he was outside the family.
Cashiers Bill Sheridan and Gene Pitts, the announcer Jack Simpson, and the timekeeper Elkin Lewis.